Proverbs 22 verse 7. 6 words. The borrower is slave to the lender. Solomon wrote that line while managing the equivalent of $2 trillion a year. He was never the borrower. Not once. Ryan is 42, regional sales manager in Nashville. $130,000 a year, more than most Americans will ever earn. And for 11 months straight, he made the minimum payment on his credit card. $800 a month, going nowhere. He was not paying down debt. He was renting it. One man, 3,000 years ago, figured out the architecture that separates those two positions. By the end of this video, you will know that architecture, the ancient Hebrew debt code Solomon used to turn obligation into empire. And you will know exactly which seat you are sitting in right now. Forget everything you have heard about debt being shameful. Solomon never said that. Here is what he actually built. 1 Kings 10, verse 14, records that 666 talents of gold arrived in Jerusalem every single year. At the lowest modern estimate, that is over $1.5 billion in gold alone, before a single trade ship returned, before one tribute caravan crossed the desert. The question is not whether Solomon was wealthy. The question is how the architecture worked. He did not build a savings account. He built a system of obligation, layered, structured, with a beginning and an end, where resources flowed toward him from every direction simultaneously. And the blueprint for that system is sitting inside the book of Proverbs, hiding in plain sight. Solomon called it wisdom. Modern behavioral economists would call it positional leverage. We are going to call it what it is, the ancient Hebrew debt code. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Proverbs 22 verse 7. Solomon was not issuing a warning here. He was drawing a map. 2 chairs, 2 positions, 1 sentence, Ryan's $800 a month. Here is what that actually meant. His credit card carried a 21% annual percentage rate. According to Bankrate's 2024 data, paying the minimum on a $10,000 balance at that rate takes 27 years and costs over $13,000 in interest. Ryan was not in debt. Ryan was in a chair, the slave's chair, and the bank was sitting in the other one. This is what Solomon identified 3,000 years before the modern credit industry existed. The slave's chair is not about the amount. It is about the structure. Consumer debt, credit cards, payday loans, anything that costs more than it can ever generate is the slave's chair by definition. It has no exit architecture, no end date built in, no asset attached, just obligation flowing outward, permanently. Ryan stared at that statement for 11 months. Then he found out about the second chair, and everything changed. At the end of every 7 years, you must cancel debts. Deuteronomy 15, verse 1. This is the Shemitah. Every 7th year under Mosaic law, debts between Israelites were released, cancelled by legal requirement. Think about what that did to the psychology of every lender in ancient Israel. You could not issue open-ended obligation. You had 7 years, maximum, which meant every loan had to be attached to something productive enough to pay back within the window. Solomon built his empire inside that constraint. The arrangement with Hiram of Tyre, cedar and craftsmen in exchange for annual agricultural provision had specific deliverables on both sides, a defined structure, a productive outcome. It was not charity and it was not consumption. It was the merchant's chair, debt that you manage, attached to an asset, with an exit built in from day one. Here is the modern translation. The average American carries 3 types of debt simultaneously, according to the Federal Reserve's 2023 survey of consumer finances. Most people treat them identically. Solomon would not. A 30-year mortgage on a home that produces rental income greater than the monthly payment, merchant's chair. A car loan on a vehicle that gets you to a job that pays you enough to cover the payment and generate margin, merchant's chair, barely. A credit card balance at 20% carrying nothing but last month's spending, slave's chair. Wrong seat, wrong architecture, Sandra is 58, nurse in Charlotte. After a grey divorce at 55, she refinanced her home and consolidated credit card debt into the mortgage. On paper, lower monthly payment. In reality, she moved 30-year consumer debt into a 30-year secured loan and reset the clock. That is not the merchant's chair. That is the slave's chair with better furniture. The Shemitah principle has one question. Does this debt have an exit date, and does it attach to something that generates more than it costs? If the answer is no to either, you are in the wrong chair. So if Solomon had this figured out 3,000 years ago, why do 77% of Americans still carry consumer debt into retirement, according to FINRA's Financial Capability Study? Because they were never taught the third chair. And the third chair changes everything. Give a portion to 7 and also to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. Ecclesiastes 11, verse 2. Solomon's fleet at Tarshish returned every 3 years, carrying 450 talents of gold from a single voyage. He did not sail those ships. He owned them. His craftsmen were Phoenician, provided by Hiram's alliance. His grain came from 12 administrative districts, each funding 1 month of national provision. He was never the one doing the labor. He was the one to whom the labor flowed. The king's chair is not about being rich. It is about position. You sit in the king's chair the moment you hold an obligation that someone else is paying. A landlord with a tenant, a business owner with receivables, a lender in a peer arrangement, even a skilled contractor whose work creates ongoing dependency, clients who cannot function without what only you can provide. FINRA reports that only 24% of Americans can correctly answer 3 out of 5 basic financial literacy questions. That is not a money shortage, that is a position shortage. Most people never learn that the chair exists, let alone how to get into it. If you have ever lain awake doing the math, adding up what you owe, calculating how many years, Solomon wrote Proverbs 22, verse 7, for exactly that moment. Not to shame you, to show you the map. 2 chairs, you can move. Ryan did not get a windfall. He did not refinance into a trap. He classified. He listed every debt by chair. Which ones were slave's chair, consumer, high rate, attached to nothing productive? Which were merchant's chair, his car loan at 4.9% that got him to a job generating 6 figures? And he asked the king's chair question, where could he build something that others became obligated to? He started with the slave's chair first, paid it off in order of interest rate, not balance size, following what behavioral finance researchers at the National Endowment for Financial Education call the avalanche method. Highest rate first, mathematically optimal. Then he stopped making the minimum on the merchant's chair debt and started making strategic overpayments with a defined exit. 36 months. He wrote the date on a calendar, and in year 2, he converted a skill, 11 years of regional sales experience, into a consulting arrangement with a former employer. 1 client, monthly retainer, obligation flowing toward him, 3 chairs, 1 map, 3,000 years old. Being debt-free might actually be keeping you poor. Solomon thought so too. If you are avoiding the debt that builds the king's chair to stay comfortable in the merchant's chair, here is your first move. Tonight, not this weekend, tonight, write down every debt you carry. Next to each one, write 1 word: slave, merchant, or king. You do not need a spreadsheet. You need the map. If someone in your life is making minimum payments and wondering why the number never goes down, share this with them. Sometimes the answer is not more money. It is a different chair. Next video, Solomon's ancient system for building income streams that run without you, the Tarshish fleet model, translated into modern passive income architecture. You will not want to miss it.